Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of the podcast. I'm super duper excited for this one because we have a phenomenal guest, someone who I've been a fan of their work for ages, and despite us being at the same conferences multiple times now, we've constantly just kept missing each other. But nonetheless, we've finally gotten time to sit down and talk about all things games. However, just a quick side note, due to the way that we recorded this episode, the quality isn't as good as normal, so I do apologise for that. But regardless, the talk was fantastic and I had a phenomenal time. So I'm going to stop rambling and babbling and let's just go straight to it. Hey everyone, I hope you're well, playing and or making the games that you all love. You're joining me, your host, Max Pez, and I am super duper excited. I'm trying not to fanboy out, as I have a very, very special guest here today, and I'm super happy to be joined by the incredible Celia Hodent. How are you doing?
Oh wow, what an intro. I'm doing swell. Thank you so much for having me. I'm pretty excited to be chatting with you today.
No, I'm excited to have you, and it's just been, like I said, brilliant to get a chance to talk with you. As we've just found out before we recorded this, been to multiple now conferences and just missed each other by let's see.
So it's like different time zones and warp zones. We don't know what's happening. Yeah.
Just timeline continuum. If we meet, everything could blow up. So it's for the will of the universe. And yeah, I'm just excited to chat with you. I've read your book, I've read your articles. So it's been fantastic to see your work all around and very inspiring stuff. Honestly, like I said, big fan. So for those who aren't as big of fanboys as me, then,
what the hell is she? What the hell?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, who? But those who don't know, can you tell us a bit about yourself so they are educated?
Sure. So my name is Celia. I'm French originally, and my background is in cognitive psychology, child development more specifically. But in the past 10 years, I've been working in the game industry. I started at Ubisoft, then I worked at LucasArts, and then Epic Games. And my specialty now is user experience. So it's all about trying to anticipate how your target audience, so your players, are going to experience your game using knowledge from cognitive science and understanding how our brain works and what's its main limitations, for example, in terms of perception, attention, memory, so that you can make sure to remove all the frustrations from the games that are not by design, so that you can focus on the experience that you want to offer and make sure that what you had intended in your mind is what your players are experiencing. So we're using all this knowledge and we use a specific process and methodology using the scientific method to identify the main problems that are preventing players from having fun with your game and being engaged with your game, so that you can focus on the biggest hurdles, because making games is hard. And there's just so many decisions that you have to take and so many things to solve and to fix. And it's helping figuring out what's the biggest bang for your buck. So that's what UX is about, and I'm using my background in psychology to do that and my knowledge of games. And recently, I was director of UX at Epic, and I worked very closely with the Fortnite team. So that was pretty fun.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, Fortnite as well as you know more than anyone, an absolute huge success.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a huge success. I did not anticipate that.
Sure.
I knew it would be a good game. I had no idea it would be that exploding. And so that's great. That turned out not too shabby.
Yeah, I was thinking the other day because game development obviously takes a long time as well. Like sometimes it can be 2, 3, and some games even longer years. Mm-hmm. And it is amazing that sometimes you're kind of sit there and you're like, man, is this going to be good? I don't know. And as you mentioned, you just don't know at certain
Yep.
points because you're so engrossed in the process,
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah,
So
that's the thing, in hindsight, you have a lot of people saying, oh, this game is such a success because XYZ.
yeah.
In hindsight, it's always easier when you're in the middle of the stuff and, oh, the shit is going to hit the fan and you have no idea where to go. That's much harder to anticipate what's going to happen. So
Oh,
UX is about that, is to be able to make better decisions and to try to understand how to what to do to make sure the game's going to be a success before you know what's going to happen.
so no pressure on you then,
Yeah.
I was going to say then, because you mentioned your backstory and past experience with child development.
Yes.
Do you feel that helped, like, steer you into games? I'm sure you're a player as well, but was it that helped? Do you feel like that helps in any way moving, into what you do now?
So when you study child development, you study how cognition develops. So it helps because you study cognitive science. So
Mhm.
the how perception, attention, memory, all these things work and how they develop uh, from young age to later in life. It's also useful when you make games targeted to kids because kids are not smaller adults. They have a very different way of processing things, and they're less good at managing stress and a lot of things. So it's also very helpful for me whenever people are developing games targeted to kids to ensure that the game was going to be appropriate, it's going to be too stressful, and more specifically, it's super useful whenever the studio wants to bring something else than just entertainment, when they want to be educational, or that's how I entered Ubisoft because their motto is how to enrich people's lives.
Mm.
So they really had a strong focus on not just entertaining people, but just like bring them something else and make them learn about history or about something. So it's super useful to understand how, when you understand how the brain grows, you understand better how it learns.
Yeah.
So that's super useful for any game. And lastly, it's super useful to understand why some concerns around things like loot box or
Yes. Yeah.
using mechanics like using the fear of missing out. Why is
Oh
this
yeah.
a concern, especially with kids? Because we understand that kids are not mature enough to be able to resist as well as adults. And even adults, it's complicated for us to resist sometimes. But for kids, they're not. Their brain is not mature enough to be able to resist. So all that is helping some considerations around ethical concerns.
Right. I can imagine, as you said, especially, I mean, all this stuff going on with loot boxes right now, and
Yes.
I was listening to a video explaining the fear of missing out,
Yeah.
and just how present that is in our everyday lives, especially with social media now, is
Yes.
insane.
That's one of these things. I mean, that's not new. All these techniques have been evolving. We know
Mm.
that we are biased. We know that we have flaws in the way we
Yeah.
think, and we don't think rationally. And so we know, for example, if you make people compare something to one another, it's going to be easier to sway them into buying one thing rather than another. I mean, there's many techniques that we use to make people buy something more expensive, or
Mm.
to buy something that they don't necessarily need. So, I mean, it's not new, but now the video game industry becoming harsher, and now it's free to play, and now it's game as a service, and now
Yeah.
the studio gets paid for how much time people spend on the game. So that's making us having to use techniques that sometimes it's not completely ethical, and we need to understand where's the line and to decide
Yeah.
where we want to put the line, because we also need to survive as an industry, because it's really not easy to survive making games. It's very
Oh.
expensive. So finding the right balance is difficult, but we should definitely start to talk about that.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. And the a podcast you were previously on, the psychology of video games, they've been mentioning a lot about that as well, on how to do it. And I couldn't imagine how you'd or how we'd get as an industry to decide that. I think it's a shame that it's gotten this far.
I don't know if it's a shame. I think it's just human and natural. But we know better than that. We've seen other industries collapse or are at the verge of collapsing because they've been using these techniques too much, and then people are wary of them, and people are dubious, and they're more conscious of it, which is good. But the video game industry, we are getting in this area, and our games are becoming more than just games. Look at Fortnite as a social space.
Yeah.
So just like Facebook or Twitter. So we're going to have these massive problems at some point in the future, maybe sooner than we expect. And if we're not ready, we're going to take a huge blow. So I think we should start to talk about it. I know it's not an easy topic, and there's a lot of people that are addressing this topic in a way that is not encouraging people to really have a dialogue by saying that video games are the devil, or
Yeah.
it's like making people as if they were on crack, which is not the case.
Oh yeah.
Because some people react that way, the game industry is like, no, we're not that way, and look at all the cool things that video games are bringing to people. So then it's not really a useful conversation. We need to take a deep breath and just look at things the way they are, and understand as game creators, that there's no such thing as a neutral design. It's what in the Richard Thaler says in his book Nudge. Every time you design something, well, you're a level designer, you know that we're going to encourage people to do certain things and discourage them to do other things. So It's not neutral, and we need to understand when sometimes it's getting more shady.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there. But that is a very different topic for why we're on this one.
Definitely.
But so I was going to ask then, with your experience and the amount of projects you worked on, when is it that you feel like it's best for you and your expertise to be brought on? Is it very early in development, and how do you work along as the game develops?
Yeah, the earlier the better. So this is really what made a big difference with Fortnite. I arrived on the project. I mean, the game was already the core gameplay loop was already working, but it was very, very early, and there were still a lot of things to create. And that was super useful to me to understand what the team was trying to do, and to understand all the challenges and what the things we had to build. That you can't test everything early on. You cannot test all the systems, how they're going to interact with one another for sure. But there's always something you can test early. So in the early stages, you can make sure that you define who's going to be your target audience. You try to define the experience. You define your pillars. You try to make sure that everybody's aligned, because that's often a big problem.
Yes.
On teams. Not everybody's aligned. And sometimes even if the team is aligned, they're not necessarily aligned with what the business was trying to accomplish. And then, at some point it's going to clash. So it's really important. And then you can try to think about what are the core elements in your game, what are the other games that are out there that are using these core elements, these core systems or features, so you can test with these games and have players coming over to watch them play, and so you can see what are the strengths and flaws of the game, so that you can see what's going to be the biggest challenges for your game, knowing that you have the systems. So there's a lot of things you can do very early on, and as soon as you start prototyping, you can test the prototypes. And the earlier the better. If you test the prototypes when they're low fidelity, then it's super cheap to iterate on them before you implement. And then you implement, and then you retest, and then you art it up. and then you retest. So if you do that, it seems like a lot of steps and like, oh, it's a lot of time to do that, but it's actually going to save you a lot of time later down the process, because if you wait until it's super further down the timeline, then if you're going to find problems, and then it's going to be really hard to disentangle where it's coming from. It's going to be way more costly to change anything if you wait until it's implemented and worse started up. And you're also way more attached to the game than in the early stages. So it's going to be harder, more costly, and harder emotionally for you to do that if you wait too long.
Yeah, no, some good points there, because I think I was chatting to a narrative designer, and he said along similar things where people bring them in like sometimes a bit too late, and as you said, people have grown attached to it, and then
it's normal. It's our baby. Yeah. So first of all, we get used to the flaws. Maybe the first time we're like, oh, we should change that. It's not good. But then, at some point you just forget about it, and it becomes invisible to you, and you just like do that times all the different features and systems in your game, and then it's a big problem. You have to solve at some point.
For sure. And then when you're doing this process, who is it that you normally communicate with? Do you have contacts in each team, or like how do you let the teams know of your findings and your suggestions and feedback with everything?
So to me, it's really UX is the concern of everyone. It's not just UI. It's everything your audience is going to experience. So from the icons all the way to the design, the music, the sound effects, the visual effects, all that. So it has to be a constant dialogue with all the leads and all the different sections in the game. So it really has to be that way, because if not, it's not going to be deep enough to solve all the issues. So now I'm a consultant, so it's a bit different. But in Fortnite, for example, I was acting as director of UX in Fortnite, so I was constantly discussing with the leads, engineer, design, art, and the exec producer, to ensure that we were all aligned, that we can identify the problems, that we could think about when to solve the problems and put resources on it. So it's a little bit about everything, and it has to be a trust relationship. We all on the same boat. We're all trying to make the best game possible.
Yeah.
But it's hard because sometimes the engineer is going to make a decision and say, oh, we need to make it that way because it's going to be much easier and less costly for us to do it that way. But maybe sometimes it's all good, but sometimes it's going to have too much of an impact on the player experience. And so then the designers can say, yeah, but if we do it that way, sure, it's going to be easier for us or for the engineers to put together. But for the experience of the player, given the complexity of the design for that feature system, it's going to be too much of a hurdle for them. It's going to really too much negatively impact the experience. Same thing with art. Sometimes you can really do whatever you want and let your creativity be, anything you're thinking about. It's crazy, and whatever you want to put that in. And sometimes you want to make sure that things are clearly conveyed because it's affecting something that's critical to the gameplay. And this is when you don't want to be all over the place. You want to make sure that you have good form function, that you're conveying the right things to the players so they can make the right decisions. So it's always a balance. It's a balancing act. And usually you have the engineers and the artists and the designers. They're all balancing in a certain way. And the UX person, like director, is more here to ensure that, wait a minute, people, like folks, we need this to go that way because it's going to impact the experience in that direction. So it's constant dialogue that you need to have with everybody if you really want to make that work.
Yeah, I think that's something that people forget because everyone thinks about the game when they think of the industry, but as you said, like being able to communicate is such an important part of what we do.
50% of the job, communicating with one another. Yes, definitely.
I know everyone likes to think we sit in the shadows and don't talk.
Yeah, we work in silos. I mean, some people do that, but then the result is usually a bit confusing to players. So yeah, we do need to dialogue, and we always gonna have to make some trade-offs. And the thing is, it's not gonna always be the same person making the trade-off. It's not gonna be always the artist. It's not gonna be always the engineer. It's not gonna be always the designer. We're gonna make the right trade-offs depending on the experience we want to offer, depending on what audience, who are these people, what is their prior experience, what they're here for. If it's hardcore gamers who just like to suffer, just like people playing Dark Souls, they're not going to have the same expectations. Are people coming over to just have 10-minute fun with the game? So you have to take all that into account, and what experience you want to offer. What is really the core elements of your game that you focus on, so that you can make the right trade-offs, the right decisions all throughout the development process.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a great thing that you said. Is it's the core of the game, and sometimes people lose that. And I worked at Ubisoft as well, so I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of the core pillars as well. And I think that's something that they push well, and I think it's something that people, as you said, should pay attention to when they're making their game.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to stay focused.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The hardest things.
Especially after like long years of development as well, to make sure you keep that, like you said, that focus and that vision, not always all the way through, but the core of it and the principle of it.
Yeah.
And there's a great talk I was listening to on a podcast called The Collective Podcast. And it was chatting with the art director of this latest Spider-Man film. I don't know why it's forgotten me. Spider-Verse, that's the one.
Yeah.
And he was talking about when he was working with the directors, and he said like half of their job, because obviously stuff gets cut or they move in a different direction. He said that half the job of the director is to make sure that everything funnels correctly into that vision, and they're not cutting stuff to be horrible or anything, but it's about keeping that vision as solid as possible.
Staying on track. Yeah, that's critical. That's the main job of a UX director, and it's even more complicated in games because it's an interactive experience. So you need the input of the player to keep moving. So that makes it. It's adding some level of complexity that you definitely need to take into account.
Love games? Love game design? We do too. So why not help us here at Level Design Lobby spread the word? With Patreon, from as little as $1 per month, you can do just that. And new for 2019, we have more reward tiers and even more awesome perks on offer, such as access to our community Discord, level design weekends, exclusive talks by professional designers, one-on-one sessions, and much more. Sound interesting? Then head on over to patreon.com/Level Design Lobby for more information and to pledge your support today. As always, we'd like to say a massive thank you to all the game gurus who've backed us so far. It's thanks to your generous support that we can continue to grow, pursue new opportunities, and bring you new, awesome, and exciting content. So thank you. And now back to our regularly scheduled program.
Can imagine. And then with that, then how do you, I don't know if you can say so much on it, but like how do you do tests for that to make sure that the engagement of the player is in the correct way or that?
Yeah, so we do different tests at different time in different times during the development cycle. Sometimes we're going to do very short tests, task oriented. If we want to figure out, are people able to accomplish a certain thing in the game? Let's say you're crafting while you're prototyping your crafting system. So you have an interaction designer that's gonna make that prototype, and we're gonna bring people in to say, all right, craft that weapon, and we just watch them and we time, how long does it take them to figure it out? So that's very task oriented. Then if your game is getting bigger, then you just bring over people to just play the game. So sometimes you just We just let them discover the game. We don't tell them anything, and we ask questions along the way about what was this, what was that, what was your objective here, and what do you think you should be doing now. So we try to ask very objective questions so that we can figure out what people understand from the game and where they're at. Then, of course, later on, as you go into closed beta, now we have telemetry data that we can also analyze and look at a larger scale what people are doing. So all of that, we're going to cross all this data. It's going to depend on many things, on how advanced the game is, on it to have precise questions, or is it more about like the onboarding of the game or retention, so you're going to bring people over for several days to play the same game to see, 20 hours in where they're at, and are they excited about something, or just are they just going to get out of there? So it's it's not complex, it's complicated. You just need to really understand what is it you're measuring and what are the main questions. That's the reason why it's important to, again, really have an open conversation with the team so that you understand what are their challenges, what are their hypotheses. So this is what you can test for. So we do the test protocols depending on what the team is trying to solve for.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. It's very interesting for me to hear all that, because I'm occasionally involved in some of these tests. Sometimes we're not. So it's been it's always fun to hear different ways, because some things that I don't even know what's going on behind the curtain.
Yeah,
so it's always cool for that one. I guess my last question about UX for you then is, what do you feel is like the biggest challenge for you on your day-to-day job?
Today, it's my job is a bit simpler because I'm called in. So it's already people who are interested in UX or bringing me over for my expertise. So they're super eager to learn. So that makes a big part of my job so much easier, because a lot of my job is about advocacy and making people understand what UX is about, that I'm not here to design the game for them, that I come in peace and we're on the same boat, and I'm not gonna distort their design intentions. I'm here to help them accomplish them. So my job is made easier ever since I've been doing consulting work. So I left Epic late 2017, so it's been nearly 2 years now.
Congratulations.
Thanks. But I guess the biggest challenge is just to make sure that the message, because now I go to studios in short bursts, so I'm going to spend 2-3 days, or maybe sometimes a week in a studio. I have to make sure that the message I have the time to give is slick and understandable, and that's going to empower them to make the right decisions. The idea is, when I go to a team, I don't want to just tease them that, oh, look at that awesome stuff and the awesome knowledge that I'm just going to show you a little bit of it, and if you want more, you're going to have to bring me back. No, what I try to do is give it away and empower everybody on the team so that they don't need me anymore. So of course it's hard to convey in just a few days all the stuff that I've learned through
I can imagine.
years of studying psychology and years working with different teams, for sure. But I'm trying as much as possible to empower them. So that's the biggest challenge, I guess, on my day-to-day work. And then the second challenge, I would say, is now to talk more about more difficult topics such as ethics or inclusion, because we're not a specifically good industry for inclusion.
No.
So these are the topics that are more challenging to address, because it's difficult to talk about that. So these are the two things.
No, I think that's a great point, especially to move on to stuff like inclusion. I think there's a lot to unpack in that, and I think off air we'll talk about a little bit about that at some point and stuff. But no, I think I think there are some very big topics. I'm just currently actually watching a documentary. I think it came out in 2012 or 2015 called Fair Play or something, and it's on about inclusion within the industry. So I think there's a lot to still take away and learn from, and a lot of people to represent as well. And stories in not as in just stories as for narrative, but amazing people to draw from. In the world.
Yeah, we have the diversity expressed in our games and also the diversity in our employees. So that's that goes hand to hand. But we have both of these problems in our industry. We don't have enough women or people of color in our industry, and we're not inclusive enough in our games we're making. So yes, women and people of color and LGBTQ. Plus is not represented well enough, and accessibility is not great. I mean, the needle is moving. There's hope.
Yes.
Right? Things are changing, but there's so much more to do. So, I mean, it's great. The mindsets are changing, so that's the most important thing. We're going to get there, but we just need to put more effort in it.
No, I agree. I think it's going to be a process. It's not something you can solve overnight for sure, and as you said, the most important thing is change people's minds, because as soon as that helps. And sometimes sadly people think it's an attack when you talk about these things, when it's not. It's
so I never really understood that, because I mean, we're not gonna stop making very masculine quote unquote games. I mean, these are still going to exist. Is that the idea is just to have more diversity and more options so that everybody can be happy and find what they care about. So, there's no... The problem is that some people are afraid of changes, and you also have this very small percentage of people who are antisocial, and they're going to react in a bad way. But that's a very small minority. And they're very vocal, and they're polluting the majority. So you have to sort that out. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, especially since a lot of that is relying on unconscious biases. So we're not even conscious that we're not inclusive. So it's complicated to address. But when there's a will, there's a way. So like you said, the first important thing is to have a shift in the mindset, and then hopefully the rest will follow. But yeah, we still have to make some effort because it's so complicated to address. It's not just saying, all right, yes, more people of color in games. Yes. All right, tick that box. All right, next.
Yes, that's it. They don't even do anything. They're just saying like, yeah, we did it, guys. Yeah. Everyone did a great job. Yeah. No, exactly. That's not what needs to be done. I guess then we'll wrap things up, because I don't want to take up too much of your time right now, buddy, because I know you're a busy person. But
we all.
Yes. Well, that's it. But just before we go, then I would like to ask, what are you currently, or do you have time right now to play anything at the moment that you're enjoying?
So it's getting more complicated for me because as I'm traveling around the world, I don't always bring my devices with me. So sometimes I bring the Switch because it's small, but sometimes it's too big for. I travel light, so I don't.
Yes.
I don't checking anything, so sometimes it's complicated. Sometimes if I'm gone for 6 weeks, for example, I really have to pick and choose when I'm going to carry with me. Sometimes I do bring over my gaming laptop. Sometimes I don't. So it makes it more complicated for me to play certain games. And a lot of my free time is dedicated into playing the games that for me to prepare when I go see a studio.
Yeah.
But so recently, I try to play games that my friends are making, or I try to play more indie games. Okay. So I've been playing, what's the name? It's Church in the Darkness. Is it Church in the Darkness?
I've not even heard of this one. Okay.
So it's my friend Richard Riles, who I was working with when I was at Ubisoft on Rainbow Six. And he released that game a few weeks ago, or a month. Hopefully, it's just a few weeks ago. Time flies. No, I think it was in August. So it's not too long. So when I was back home, I played a little bit of it, and I played the Squanch game, Trover. What's the full name? Trover versus the world. Trover saves the universe.
Yeah, yes,
Trover saves the universe.
Yes.
So yeah, it's my friend Tanya Watson, who was a CEO at Squanch Games, and she worked hard on it, and all the team there. So I try as much as I can to. Well, I play a lot of different games just to stay current. But what I really love right now is to play games from smaller studios or from my friends, just to support them. So yeah, but trying to think one of the I played Steel of Solitude also.
Oh yes, I'm partway through that. Yeah, I'm enjoying that. one.
So that was pretty good. But also I played the big blockbusters, of course. So yeah, but I try to play more of the indie games, because it's where it's at. I mean, things are rougher on the edges, but they're also interesting because they're trying to convey different emotions. I played a lot of Sky, Children of the Light.
Oh right, yeah. Did you enjoy it? Because I've just installed it. I haven't played it yet, but I've installed it.
The learning curve is a bit more difficult with this game than the previous games from that game company. Okay. But it's really beautiful. It's all about giving, and that's a very interesting mechanic. So I mean, you'll have, if you play Journey, you will have the same. There's a lot of things that are going to remind you of Journey, but this one is way deeper. I mean, there are way more people, and all the mechanics around giving are. I found them a little bit more complicated to get.
Okay.
But that's just a an onboarding problem. Once you get a knack of it, then it's really cool. It's really interesting to see how it's changing your way to interact with other people versus a game where you have to shoot people in the face.
Yes, slightly different.
Slightly different, yeah.
Did you get a chance to play Florence on mobile? I love that.
Yeah, Florence was really interesting. So I'm less of a narrative game player. I actually prefer to shoot people in the face. My spare time, it's I play a lot of Overwatch. That was really my go-to game whenever I have a few minutes to relax. That's how I relax. Florence was really interesting in the sense where it's different. And this is one of these games that I finished. It's not that often that I can finish a game. So yeah, that was really different. That based on the narrative and had that story and try to the way you have to interact also. That was quite interesting.
Yeah, no, I like that as well. I think one of my favorite moments with it was it's the moment where you start to have an argument for the first time, and you seem to make the speech bubbles. The shape starts to change in them, and then the camera starts to skew as if who's winning or who's being loud. And I thought, just the representation of it was just very, very clever.
Yep, definitely. There's also there's a game I need to play, like the new San Barlow game, Telling Lies. I have yet to play this game. This is the one behind Her Story. I don't know if you remember that game.
Oh right, yes.
That was also quite interesting.
That was a very good one. It took me a while to figure out the actual who had done what, but it makes me sad because I'm a twin as well. Spoilers now, but there we are.
Thank you, Max.
Well, I put that one up, and when this one we're going to wrap it up before I get yelled at anymore.
But yeah, I want to play that game as well. I mean, that's cool because now we have, talking about diversity, now we have a lot of different games. It's just I wish we had more like these games that are coming from a lot of different people. Like for example, we don't have enough games coming from Africa. I want to play more African games. I want them to be visible. And that's the thing when I'm talking about diversity. I want to have different ways of approaching games, because that's really enriching when you have something really different that is not using all the conventions you're used to, and it's talking about different story or different characters. That's really what makes games so cool. To be able to interact in a world made by someone very different from you.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's so interesting how players interact with as well. Like I had the fortune to go over to China this year, and just because they have a very different experience, I think, to us over here in the West with mobile games. Like they love them way more than us, and in maybe an exaggeration, but it seems to be that's their main state of play is through mobile. And you know, it's just fascinating how that's the norm for them. And when you talk about like a AAA console or PC game, there is obviously dedication, but it seems still to be more towards mobiles, which is again, different things for it for sure. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on if it's a free-to-play game or not. It's getting harder for me to play free-to-play games on mobile.
Yeah.
Because I just see through it. I mean, I kind of see the matrix. It's just harder for me to get into it. Because I just understand the mechanics and what they're trying to make me do. So I'll be curious to see what's gonna happen with the platforms that are, like Apple, encouraging more of that. You get paid the more people spend time in your game. That's gonna be interesting to see that unravel.
Especially with like Apple Arcade, and I'm not a huge mobile game player. I play a few here and there, but when I saw Apple Arcade, I was kind of like, okay, But yeah, we'll see. The only thing I wanted to try was that Us 2's game, Handle with Care.
Yeah.
That looked aesthetically very cool.
Yeah.
But it's hopefully that'll come out outside of Apple Arcade at some point.
We'll see.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see on that one.
Yep.
But yeah. Wow.
Yeah. No, that's going to be interesting to see. And that's also the reason why we need to talk about ethics and as content providers, where we want our industry to go. Because if we let things happen, all of a sudden we're going to wake up, and if we want to make money, we're going to have to have a specific business model and have to use specific tricks. So I mean, there's room for everyone and for all the different business models. But at the end of the day, there's no such thing as neutral design. So if the platforms that can make the games exist are favoring a certain type of game or favoring a certain type of business model, then we're going to lose our diversity, which would be sad. I would find that sad.
Oh, me too. It's not what makes the games industry great. Is so many different minds at work and making so many, and hopefully we'll see more diversity in it come through, because the games that you just listed off there versus the traditional ones are very different in terms of style. So that's a very big one. But
let's have that conversation.
Yes, we will. But we'll wrap it up, because let's have that conversation. I'm going to say, and we're going to close it right now.
That's the teaser for next one.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one there for sure. But if people want to reach out to you, mate, how can they get in contact?
I'm pretty easy to find on social media. I'm pretty active on Twitter and LinkedIn. These are my favorite platforms, should I say. And I'm also I have a website, celiahodent.com. There's a web form on there. If you click on consulting, you can just enter what is it you're looking for and when and where in the world, and then I'll reach out to you back. But otherwise, you can just ping me on Twitter and LinkedIn. And don't hesitate to ping me again if I don't reply, because sometimes I'm underwater and then I forget because the brain is flawed. I don't know if you know that, Max, but
I'm aware.
It's not my fault. All right.
It's not my fault I spoiled certain games as well, but we won't touch on that one, flaws. But yeah, there'll be a link to all of that in the description down below. I'm also going to link to your book as well, because I'm a strong fan of your book, and I'll need you to sign it one day, which will happen. We'll eventually see each other.
Just need to see each other, okay?
That's all. Just a small detail.
Next GDC. Next GDC. Let's do that.
We'll do it for sure. All right, mate. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast again. I really do appreciate your time, and I'm happy to finally have you. If you do want to get in contact with me, you can so on Twitter, which is @MaxPairs. You can email into the show, leveldesignlobby@gmail.com. And yeah, if you want to support the show, please check out patreon.com/leveldesignlobby. All right, everyone, take it easy, and we'll catch you all next time.
Thank you. Bye.